Am I the fool for refusing to change my daughter's therapist when my wife aka her stepmom wants us to? I, 37 male, have a 10-year-old daughter called Ren. She's my only child with my late wife Sarah. Sarah died on Ren's 5th birthday. Cancer. 3 years ago I met my current wife Lindsay, 35 female, and we got married just under a year ago and our daughter together is a few weeks old. Overall Ren and Lindsay get along well. She calls Lindsay Bug, which is a nickname Lindsay's grandparents use for her. Ren thinks it's funny. Ren struggled with the loss of her mom and very initially with me meeting someone. Her original therapist she was seeing for grief retired and it took forever to find another therapist who could help her grieve and adjust to the changes in her life. I admit I was delayed in getting her help to begin with. It was over a year after Sarah died that Ren started therapy. I went through many therapists after the original one retired until Ren liked, would open up to and was comfortable with another one. Therapy has helped. She doesn't go as frequently. But she still attends. Lindsay believes Ren needs to see a new therapist. Because Ren calls our daughter together a half-sister. She doesn't call her just a sister. But half is used all the time. Lindsay's parents questioned where she learned half from and I told them at school and I hear a couple of Ren's friends mention step and half siblings. Lindsay doesn't like that Ren doesn't just say sister. I told her it's not a big deal. The family therapist we saw for about 11 months also said it was normal and to let her decide if she drops the half in time. But Lindsay believes this is a sign she needs more help, to process the fact that our daughter is not less of a sister and to help her realize saying half other's her sister and might hurt her sister's feelings. I argued that our daughter will grow up hearing about step and half siblings in school and won't be unnatural. She said just because others do it doesn't mean we should be okay with it and she asked what the harm is in finding a new therapist. I said the fact Ren has met with all of them local to us before we found another the very last time. I said the fact Ren has a therapist she is still working with and has helped her. I told her I also don't want to change therapist just to make her say sister instead of half-sister. Lindsay said if I respected her opinion as an equal parent and decision-maker in Ren's life, I would agree to try this for our family's sake. Because clearly Ren has some issues with her sister. While she said this Ren was watching her sister sleep and smiling at her. Ren chose a special photo of her and her sister for her bedroom wall. She still loves her. But she knows they have different moms and thinks half makes sense for that. Lindsay said she doesn't feel equal and even though she let the topic drop, I can tell she feels dismissed. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for telling my mom she and her husband need to admit they fucked up and find a way to move on? My parents divorced when I, 18 male, was 6. My younger sister was 4 and my younger brother was 3. They shared custody 50-50ths of us ever since, though now I don't have a custody thing set up because I'm an adult now and no longer part of any of that. I stay with my dad now. Mom remarried when I was 11 and my siblings were 9 and 8. Her husband was divorced, had 2 kids who were 8 and 6. He had primary custody of them but in the summer they'd get longer with their mom. My mom and her husband moved in together a month before the wedding. From that point on they created these really strict, really weird, and really crazy rules that basically made sure we were never a blended family and there was always animosity. Those rules were: if you want permission for something, ask your new parent, not the regular one. No bio siblings only playing, everyone has to mix. No closed bedroom doors. We want to see if you're mixing. Every day you'll tell the people in the family one thing you love about them. You must give everyone hugs before leaving the house. No step/half nonsense in this house. There were others. Those were the most damaging ones. My mom told me she wanted us to be a happy blended family and she did not want favoritism of parents or siblings. She told me I didn't just have a brother and sister anymore, I had 2 of each. I also had a second dad. They enforced this too, or tried to. The hugs never took off and I never ever told her husband or his kids stuff I loved about them. I never loved them to begin with. The rules led to fighting, to us pretty much causing chaos if they took us places. We were all grounded pretty much all the time at their house. We also started doing stuff to make sure family vacations couldn't happen together. Her husband's kids would make plans with their mom to go to her weeks he and mom had a vacation booked for. My siblings and I would ask dad to book his vacation first and put it in their app. My mom and her husband would get so frustrated and they'd try giving us these talks. Mom would come to me and say I was the oldest and needed to set an example. And now that I no longer go to mom's house, my siblings don't want to either and make a bigger deal out of it. Mom called me yesterday and told me I needed to help create the family unit they fought so hard for before it's too late. She mentioned me being the oldest again and how I should be there for a week when we can all be a family. I told her no, I don't want to, and we're not a family. I told her they fucked up. They need to admit it and they need to find a way forward because none of the kids they set so many rules for want to be family. Mom started crying down the phone to me asking why I wanted to ruin her marriage and rejected the family they were trying to be. How could I say they failed when we wouldn't even try? Am I the fool? Am I the fool for laughing in my cousin's face when she tried to stage an intervention for my drug use? I, 27 male, have a condition which causes me to overproduce earwax. I don't tell people about it because I was bullied for it growing up. Only my wife and parents know. Every other day, I have to put medication in each ear, let it sit, then flush it out with a rubber-tipped syringe. This prevents ear infections, vertigo, permanent hearing loss, and worsening of my tinnitus. I have dealt with all of these things to some extent, so I stay on top of my eardrop regimen. If my alarm goes off when I'm with others, I go to the bathroom for 20 minutes and knock it out. If I don't follow my schedule I forget, so I can't put it off. 2 weeks ago, my mom hosted family dinner. My cousin Kara, 37 female, saw me waltz off to the bathroom to do my thing, syringe in hand, and asked what I was doing. I said just a minor medical thing. She kept pushing but I didn't want to say anything because she gossips. I told her it's personal and scooted past. When I left, she was standing in the hallway. She asked what took so long and why the toilet didn't flush. I said none of her business. She said she didn't mean to offend. Last weekend, my friend called me to invite me out to lunch with some buddies. He said to meet up at his house so we wouldn't have to drive separately. I arrive at his house to find Kara and my friend sitting solemnly on the couch. Kara said they were here to talk about my problem and that they just wanted to help. I said there is no problem. Suddenly it clicked in my head what this was about. I couldn't help but laugh a little bit out of shock. She asked what was so funny, and I said first of all why didn't you talk to my wife or my parents? She said she didn't want to involve my enablers, which just made me laugh harder. She looked annoyed and said she was done trying to help. I said that's all right by me. She stormed out. I explained to my friends. They knew I have a condition but never pressed me on it. I guess when Kara approached them they thought I was lying. Obviously I'd rather they know than worry about me being an addict when I'm not. I thanked them for their support anyways. Kara had apparently reached all of my friends by through my social media. We all got a good hearty laugh out of it, which Kara must have heard because she was, of course, eavesdropping. She burst back in and told me to tell them the truth, to which I said I did. My friend kicked her out. We went for lunch and I thought that was that. My mom called me yesterday and told me she had talked to Kara about the whole thing and explained. She said Kara was very upset with me and essentially called me an asshole for not explaining, and laughing in her face and embarrassing her. I said I was embarrassed and that Kara had no right to my info. I think she shouldn't go around snooping and making assumptions. My mom still thinks I should apologize. ETA, she didn't see my alarm go off, just ran into me on her way from the kitchen. Am I the fool for not driving my neighbor to her hospital of choice, instead taking her to the one which was more convenient for me? I live halfway between Hospital A and Hospital B. Hospital A is maybe 3 minutes less of a drive and is a large hospital, whereas Hospital B is smaller, however still good. My neighbor is pregnant and yesterday she knocked on my door, saying she had complications and needed to go to the hospital but was unable to drive herself. I said of course, I was almost ready to leave for work and Hospital B is on the way, a 4-minute detour. She told me that she needed to go to Hospital A and I said sorry, but I'm already cutting it close to being late and that Hospital A would be a 30-minute detour, otherwise I could call her an ambulance and get our other neighbor, elderly, without a license, to stay with her. Neighbor said she didn't have ambulance cover and reiterated that she needed to go to Hospital A. I apologized, said that I could not do that, and after some back and forth I ended up leaving without her. When I returned home from work I copped an earful from my neighbor's boyfriend saying that I'm lucky her complications weren't that serious. I should also add, it's not a matter of Hospital A being her primary care for her pregnancy, for that she goes to Hospital C. She didn't want to go to Hospital B because it is smaller. TLDR, I didn't give my neighbor a ride in an emergency because she wouldn't compromise and consider my own needs for being at work on time. Edit, I was hoping not to have to explain my line of work, but it turns out it is important in this context. I'm a support worker. I support clients living with disabilities to attend their own appointments, keep their routines, etc. So if I was late to work, this would have an impact on the people I work with. I don't work a standard 9 to 5 in an office. Am I the fool for telling my wife she needs to learn to communicate like a reasonable person instead of yelling and barking orders? My wife Sasha, 33 female, and I, 34 male, have 3 wonderful children together who are 5 and under. For about a year now Sasha and I have been having some trouble and it has built into a bigger issue and I snapped and now I need to know if I'm TA. With our first 2 Sasha wanted to be a SOM and was. But she was miserable so she returned to work, but instead of going into the office she was working from home. She found out she was pregnant around the time of starting this new work from home plan. Originally she wanted the kids in the house with her and was against sending them to daycare. But she struggled. So in the end, before our 3rd child was born, she agreed we needed them in daycare. I'd pick them up on my way home from work. After a while though she changed her work hours so she could pick them up. This is when a lot of the problems began. She wasn't happy doing this. That much is clear. Instead of telling me or admitting it when I would ask, she would call me pissed off when I went to do our big grocery shop each week, or if I had a late meeting at work and wasn't home to take over with the kids. I always communicated changes of plans and what days I'd grab groceries after work. But she would get so pissed off and would snap at me. Other times I'd have the kids, she'd say we were out of something and I needed to go and get it in a very confrontational way. Then she'd get pissed when I took the kids with me because she was also doing stuff. She'd get mad that I didn't leave the kids with her. Or that I was gone so long with the kids, without telling her, when she asked me to go get what we were out of. I have tried to sit the two of us down and talk this out and figure out what changes need to happen, but she never has anything to add and dismisses ideas of a written schedule or maybe alternating who does the grocery run. She has complained that I'm never around to take over with the kids when she needs me. But she also refuses to leave the kids for me to pick up from daycare. This changed on Thursday when I did pick the kids up because she had to make up for some hours at work. So I picked the kids up and decided to grab some food, let her know and asked what she wanted, got no reply, so I got her the usual. When we went home she had finished work and was, to put it simply, grumpy. It was so clear. When the kids were in bed she went nuts on me and told me I'm never any fucking help and I make life harder. She told me I didn't do it right. I lost my temper and told her I never can do anything right apparently. And I told her she needs to learn to communicate like a reasonable person instead of yelling at me and barking orders and getting pissed at me for not being able to read her mind and figure out what she wants done differently each and every time. She told me not to talk to her that way, and how dare I act like she can't tell me to do something because she's a woman. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for only paying my stepson's bill at family dinner? I, 31 female, have been married to my husband, 35 male, for 2 years. My stepson, who is 16, and I were invited to a family dinner by my relatives. My husband couldn't join us due to a work commitment. I make a good salary and sometimes cover my nephews and other family members' meals at these dinners as a gesture of goodwill. However, this time, I decided to pay only for my stepsons and my own meals. Our total came to $250. We had plans to go shopping and have a special outing just for the two of us later in the month, so I wanted to manage our expenses more carefully. After the dinner, my sister-in-law, my nephew's mom, complained. She accused me of favoring my stepson over my own family and said I spoil him too much. She was really upset and claimed that my actions showed I care more about my stepson than my own flesh and blood. Her comments really pissed me off. I argued back, saying that they invited us to dinner and expected me to cover everyone's meal, which didn't seem fair. I explained that my stepson and I have our own plans and budget, and it was unreasonable to expect me to pay for everyone. To make matters worse, some family members had to borrow money from others just to cover their share because they felt entitled to have me pay for the entire bill. The family is now split, some are on my side, agreeing that I was justified given the situation, while others think I should have just paid for everyone and discussed it afterward. Many are shocked by the amount and said they wouldn't have paid the bill either. They argue that it would have been more considerate to cover the entire bill at the time, given that we were all together. Am I the fool for only paying for my stepsons and my own meals at the family dinner? Am I the fool for being a bridezilla and not planning to invite my half-siblings to my wedding? Please tell me if I'm being a fool bridezilla here. So I, 25 female, will be getting married in a few months. We're in the process of getting invites ready, but we hit a snag because my parents, mostly my mom, are upset that I don't want to and wasn't planning on inviting my half-siblings, 27 female, 33 male and 36 male, to my wedding. My mom is the parent we have in common. Their dad died while mom was pregnant with my half-sister. She met my dad 7 months after her first husband died. They dated and quickly he moved in and started helping her with my half-siblings, and they wanted to become a family. I was born within the first year of their marriage. Even though I'm less than 2 years younger than my half-sister, we were never close, and I wasn't close to my half-brothers either. They didn't like that mom remarried. I also understand that for them it was very fast. They really didn't adjust to all the changes that happened in those 2 years of their lives, which I also can understand. They stuck by each other though, and that included my half-sister. They made sure she knew she was their dad's kids and not my dad's, and that I was a half-sister. My mom did a lot to discourage the use of half. I remember I started saying it pretty young because my half-siblings said it and she'd correct me and correct them. My half-siblings never expressed dislike of me to my face. But their disinterest said a lot. My half-sister wouldn't play with me. She and my half-brothers would talk to me a little, but it was always like them with me and not the four of us together. Even when the boys moved out, my half-sister was distant. My mom and dad would have these family fun days out, but they usually ended with my half-sister screaming that dad was trying to replace her dad and he needed to leave her alone. The boys would also come home to see her and would take her out. Sometimes they did it while mom was at work and refused to listen to dad saying no. Other times she'd go with them after school. I was never invited or included. We're all adults now and things have not changed. My half-brothers are married with kids and I was not invited to their weddings and I have not met their kids. My half-sister has 2 kids as well, though she's not married. I saw her oldest once but didn't get to interact or anything. They talked to mom. But the relationship is somewhat strained. Mom told them she was disappointed they were so cold to me. That they refused to even have a friendship with me. Knowing all this, though, my parents want me to invite my half-siblings, and their families, to my wedding. They know there is no chance any of them would say yes. But mom said I should still invite them. Should show them we are still family. My dad told me it was a bridezilla thing to only think of what I want and not to think of the family too. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for not helping my friend in a foreign country when I was the host and responsible for their well-being? I invited my college friends to come to my country to visit and tour my home city, and we had a blast. An unwritten rule in my country, potentially exposing myself here to those who know, is that if you saw an old person, anyone really, but especially old people, on the street that fell, you should never ever attempt to help. This is cemented by an historical case where a poor guy helped a random old lady up on the street who then turned around, accused the guy and demanded compensation. The courts ruled in the old lady's favor because, why would you help her if you did not push her? We were on the streets when, and you guessed it, we saw an old man on the ground. I quickly tried herding my friends away, but some of them wanted to go help, especially because they saw passerbys walking like the old man is invisible. I explained to them the story and how as their host I'm responsible for their well-being, and most got it. But one of my friends was still grumbling about how heartless I was. I thought I managed to get the group going, but she ran back when I was not watching and decided to help the old man. And what everyone expected to happen, happened. It was a hassle. The old man claimed all sorts of made-up injuries and asked for about $1,400. We had to call the police, who suggested we just pay the old man because he is old, or we might need to open a case and that old man will need to go to the hospital to do checkup, which might get us larger fees since he seemed the type that knows the doctor. They seemed keen on not opening a case even though it very much reached the monetary limit for one, making it very clear to my friend how much trouble it would cause her if they did. In the end, my friend caved to pressure and agreed to pay up. Here's where I may be the asshole. She asked if we can all help with the money, especially me since she is not rich at all, doesn't want to be penniless in a foreign country, is not familiar with the payment systems while I'm the host and is responsible for her. I refused, for myself and low-key for everyone else when I said I'm responsible for your well-being, but not your stupidity. In the end the old man took us to an ATM and she paid by herself, and there was barely any money left in her account. I figure it should be fine because we were staying at my house so she gets free breakfast and dinner, and she bought her return ticket before. Many of the activities we planned, like visiting malls and parks, are free, but she stayed holed up in my room the entire rest of the trip and refused to talk to any of us, only cryptically posting on her Insta. They are all back home now. The rest of my friends think it's not my fault, but her parents recently texted me to tell me how bad a host I was. So am I the fool? Should I have helped her pay? Am I the fool for only bringing my own clothes to the laundromat, and not my wife's? I, 31 male, and my wife, 30 female, have been married for a couple of years. Early on, a random thing that weirdly caused a lot of fights was laundry. It turns out that we are both strangely particular and have strong opinions about how laundry should be done, proper temperatures, fabric softener versus dryer sheets, what clothes should be washed together, etc. Due to this, we ended up agreeing to disagree and decided that we would each just be responsible for washing our own clothes. This has worked out for us just fine. However, the old hand-me-down washer that we got from my parents completely died last week. It's going to be a few months until we can afford to purchase a new one, so we're going to have to go to the laundromat in the meantime. A couple of days after the washer died, I was getting low on clean clothes. I needed to wash my uniforms for work and was down to just a few pairs of socks and underwear. My wife had more recently done laundry and her socks and underwear drawer were still fairly full. Her hamper was only about halfway full. I had the day off, and my wife was at work. I hauled my dirty clothes off to the laundromat and did a load. When my wife came home and I told her about how I'd gone to the laundromat, she asked why I had only brought my own clothes. I answered, because we decided to just wash our own clothes, remember? She said that it was different now, and that as long as I was going to the laundromat that it wouldn't have hurt or really been much more work to bring her clothes along, too. She said that laundromats are expensive and that it would have saved some money. But I said that there had been no discussion of our deal changing just because we are going to have to go to a laundromat for now. This isn't a huge deal, but she thinks I was inconsiderate, while I think she is expecting me to be a mind reader. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for kicking my sister and her children out over a toothbrush? This is a throwaway account. For some background that may be important to the story, I am a 26-year-old man, and I live alone. When I was 5 years old, I was diagnosed with high-functioning autism. Because of my autism, I have a special interest in the children's show PAW Patrol. It is a huge aspect of my life and personality, and I find myself often collecting merchandise from the show. One of my spare bedrooms is decorated completely PAW Patrol based, and the walls are covered in shelves where I display my figures/plushies. On to the story now. My older sister, 29 female, asked to stay with me for a week or two with her two kids, 11 and 9 male, because I have an empty room, and her husband had been having really bad arguments non-stop and she needed to take a break and make sure it wouldn't affect her children's emotional health. Early Wednesday morning, they came to my place and I settled them into the guest room, different from the room I keep my merchandise, and had to go to work at about 7 a.m. I told my sister to just relax for a while and to make herself at home, with my only stipulations being she and her boys keep away from my merchandise room and my bedroom. I came home from work later on to the children asleep on my couch and my sister having a shower. Once I had went into my merchandise room to check up on it, it was a mess. Figures were on the ground, and lots of my stuffed animals were moved from where they go on their shelves. Nothing was damaged aside from a PAW Patrol toothbrush that I kept sealed and on display. It was opened and on the floor. I got really upset at my sister and sort of wanted to cry. Autism affects my emotional regulation, especially when a situation is related to my special interest, and I started to ask my sister to replace the toothbrush since her children went in the room. I asked them all not to go in. I didn't raise my voice, but I was very upset and angry. She refused and told me I'm a D****ck for asking her to replace something I left out in the open, and we just kept arguing. Eventually, I was close to having a meltdown because my PAW Patrol items are really important to me, and I felt ignored and belittled. I asked her and her children to leave my house, and offered to get her a hotel room for a while because I was struggling to calm down. I may be a fool for acting this way. She screamed at me and called me dramatic and childish before slamming the door and leaving. I know the toothbrush wasn't that expensive, but I found myself feeling really upset because the boundary I set was broken and my favorite room was left a mess. Am I the fool for making her leave? Am I the fool for scolding my wife's nephew in public? My wife and I disagree on this. She said what I did was pretty messed up, so I'll try to explain as neutrally as I can. We are on vacation taking our kids to visit her nephews. The relevant parts are that there are 5 kids ranging in ages from 9 to 16. The 12-year-old, my wife's nephew, is the one I snapped at. I rented a large home so everyone could stay together. I had tried to redirect his negative behavior until it kept getting worse and worse. I'll explain what I tried. On the first day, he opened the car door while I was driving over 55 miles per hour. I laughed it, joked that shouldn't happen, and child locked the doors. On the second day, it was his constant complaining that we weren't all doing the activities that he wanted to do, specifically that he wanted to play pickleball. I tried to explain, as an adult and without anger, that we flew thousands of miles and planned this trip specifically to a national park to see this area. We have a separate part of our vacation for games and hanging out like that. He still pouted and complained, so and I think I'm about 80% the asshole for this, had all of us do an extra 1-mile hike for the day. Side note, everyone including him actually enjoyed that hike the most, but it was still wrong of me. On the third day, we were all cleaning the house to leave. I heard him ask my son, 9 years old, if he wanted to go wait in the car. My son told him, "Why? So you don't have to help clean? That's messed up." I did not say anything and just looked at the two. A bit later, my wife asked him to help the other kids clean. He flat ignored her and stayed on his iPad. Later that day, we all went to a lake. He was skipping stones. Eventually he ended up skipping them near people. My wife told him to stop, that he needed to either stand on the other side of them or throw them in a different direction. He argued with her that he didn't need to because he had good aim. I interjected and told him, "Your aunt asked you to. That should be good enough. Nobody wants rocks thrown near them." And he threw them in a different direction for about 10 minutes. Then he threw them right near the other people again. So I stopped him and told him off in a loud voice. Basically I told him, "Your aunt told you not to do something and you did it anyways? Why is that? Do you think it's funny? Do you like me yelling at you in front of everyone? Would you like me to force you to go up to that couple and apologize? Do you think people want random rocks thrown near them? Get it together." More or less. My wife thinks I'm way in the wrong because in her opinion, it's not my place to discipline her cousin's kid. In my opinion, I'm the aggrieved because I informed my wife's cousin, the child's mother, of all these events after they happened and she did nothing to prevent the escalation. I think this might be a cultural issue as well, as to me it seems quite normal for any family member to discipline a child. Please let me know your thoughts, as I am not close to changing my heart on the matter. Am I the fool for telling my stepdaughter to stop cooking in the middle of the night? I 34M and my wife 40F live with her 2 kids 13M and 18F and her daughter's boyfriend who's also 18. My wife and I work 9 to 5 and my stepson goes to school 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. He's on summer break now. I take turn cooking with my wife. One day I'll cook dinner and the next day she'll cook, just to keep it balanced for the both of us since we get pretty tired after work. We always make sure to have leftovers ready for launch the next day so the kids can heat it up in the microwave and have something to eat when we're not home. On the weekends I do yard work and wash the vehicle, my wife cleans the house instead. This has been working fine for us so far. Last week I approached my stepdaughter and asked her if she could go easy on the cooking in the middle of the night because we're trying to make the food last. She seemed to have understood what I told her, but I noticed things didn't change and she keeps cooking in the middle of the night and also during the day even though we make sure to leave plenty of cooked food which everyone in the house eats. My wife agrees with me and told her if she gets hungry during the day or night she can make herself a sandwich or have cereal if anything. It doesn't help the fact that she doesn't wash any of the dishes after she cooks, so when we get home from work we have to wash a bunch of plates, pots and utensils on top of the ones used for the meals we already prepare for them. Today my stepson got into an argument with his sister because he found her at 9 a.m. cooking the steaks for the family barbecue tomorrow. She was searing them on the stove which caused a small grease fire on the burner. I don't know what the heck she did, which caused the smoke detector to go off. Apparently her boyfriend was craving steaks and they forgot they were supposed to be for the barbecue. Nobody believes that since we were planning it for the past 3 days. I'm pretty upset that she cooks all the food at night or during the day, but at the same time I don't like having to tell people they shouldn't eat when they're hungry. It doesn't feel morally right to say that. My wife said I wasn't being unreasonable and she agrees that there should be rules when it comes to cooking and making the food last. She brought up a valid point when she mentioned that me and her are the only ones paying for all the house expenses as we're the only people working. I grew up borderline starving and I always told myself I was never going to allow my family to go hungry. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for calling an insecure child fat? My 17F cousin, 12F, recently moved houses and now lives a lot closer to me. She has been coming over to my house all the time to hang out. However, literally every single time she comes over, she insists on weighing ourselves on the scale, especially after a meal. I used to be very self-conscious about my weight, but every time I decline, she's like, "You're just scared to weigh yourself because you know you're 200 pounds, or something like that." She weighs 124 pounds while I weigh 127 pounds. However, I am over 5'8" while she's not even 5 foot. She always gloats about being lighter and therefore skinnier than I am and doesn't shut up about it. She never listens to me when I tell her to stop, and I obviously weigh more because I'm taller. I finally had enough and told her that I might be slightly heavier than her now, but in a few years my weight will stay the same and her weight will double mine's, and she'll be even bigger than she is now. She then burst into tears, sobbing and screaming, telling me she hated me. My uncle said she was only obsessed with weight because she keeps getting bullied for her body by her schoolmates and even her own mother, and she only brought up my weight because seeing that even someone as thin as me was 120 plus lbs made her more self-confident. I said it's not my responsibility to make her feel confident at the expense of my own self-esteem. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for making my husband care for our baby while he has a headache? I, 29F, and my partner, 27M, have been together for 7 years and have a child together, 1M. He's about as challenging as you'd expect a 1-year-old to be, but he's easy to play with, eats well, and sleeps well. We both work full-time, him at home and me in a non-profit. Our son goes to daycare. When we are all at home, I generally do the cooking / cleaning / childcare / waking up with baby. I occasionally ask for help with chores and childcare, with on and off success. Frequently, my partner is too busy or doesn't want to, cooking, specifically, or is working out of town. Recently he even took a 3-week boys trip. I am in the final stages of applying for a job with the government. I've worked my butt off from freshman year in university to have this job and I am taking it extremely seriously. My next assignment is a written essay that I had less than 48 hours of notice for. I am not a quick writer and this is not my strong suit, so I was hoping to get it done tonight, and that way if I needed more time I could work on it tomorrow, or the next day. I went to let my partner know I'd be leaving our son home while I went to the library to do the essay. I know if I stay home the baby is going to get sent into the room. He was in bed and said no, he had a headache and needed to rest. He didn't sleep well and had to work today. I let him know that this is extremely important to me and I don't want to rush. He ignored me. I let him know, again, I'm leaving. He is upset with me that he is feeling awful and I am still putting the work on him. I've prepped dinner, baby literally just needs to be fed, supervised, and put to sleep. I don't even care if they veg out and watch Bluey. But he is still sick. Am I the fool to insist on going? Update, he got out of bed and watched baby with no further complaints. Had a good talk about fairness and expectations because as many of you guessed, this is nowhere near the first time. He is well aware he's on thin ice and some major adjustments need to be made. Am I the fool for not buying my wife a plane ticket so she is missing the family vacation? My wife is horrible with money. At the beginning of our marriage we pulled out money together and she would use all of it. Her job is pays shit compared to mine. So when we combined the money she went crazy. I had many conversations with her over it and even tried to get her to take a money finical class. Over time it got worse and worse. About a year ago I learned she was in bad credit card debt. I gave her he chose of divorce or we separate our money and she needs to fix her debt ASAP. To her credit she took it seriously and she is fixing her credit card debt. We have separate money and I pay for the bills while her only worry is to buy groceries. My family has a big vacation coming up and everyone is invited. The trip is to Europe and plane tickets are going to cost $1,000 plus. My parents are going to pay for the resort, so the only thing needs to be paid is the plane ticket and fund money for the trip. I plan on going. She informed me that she will not be able to afford the ticket. I point out the trip is in about 4 months so she should be able to save up. She informed me that she needs to use it for her credit card debt in order to get I paid off. I told her okay and I'll inform my family side that she can't make it. This started an argument that I am not willing to pay for her ticket and me going on vacation without her. I told her this is her own fault and if she was responsible with money we would be here. So am I the fool? Am I the fool for giving my 11-year-old a small sip of coffee? My wife and I were both raised Mormon. I left church about 4 months ago. I started drinking coffee since I no longer thought it was wrong. We agreed that the kids would not have the option to drink it until they were at least 16. My son has often stated that he does not like the smell of coffee or the taste of the espresso jelly beans or anything else coffee flavored. The other day I took the kids to a town fair and there was a booth with coffee trials. I tasted a cup and my 11-year-old was asking constantly to try a taste. I gave him a tinny bit expecting that he would also find it gross. He enjoyed it and proceeded to tell my wife as soon as we got home before I could discuss it with her. She is very upset with me and thinks I ruined our trust. I probably shouldn't have let him have the coffee, but I feel like she is overreacting, so am I the fool? Am I the fool for hosting events outside of my house because of a service dog? I don't like dogs, never been fond of them, but I don't judge people who have dogs as long as they are responsible. I have a group of friends and we like to host events at our houses like parties, potlucks, game night, etc. About 2 months ago, my friend got a service dog for her seizures and I was already planning on hosting a potluck, but I didn't want a dog in my house. She sheds a lot, so I decided to choose a camping area where we can all have fun and enjoy, since it would be so fucked up to deny my friend from coming over with a dog that she needs. This has been going on ever since my friend, let's call her Sarah, got a service dog. Today was my turn to host and one of my friends, say, Jacob, suggested we do a game night. I told them that I would rather have events outside of my house and, well, we don't have anything to connect my PS4 outside with. I suggested maybe we can do a movie night instead and go out to the movies. Jacob was confused and asked why I stopped doing game night at my house, and I explained that I don't want asterisk animals. I'm so sorry, I said, pets, that was wrong of me, I didn't catch that, in my house, let alone a dog that sheds. No one batted an eye, but Sarah started to question me, like if she's no longer welcome in my house, if I am ableist, and I told her that I would rather host things outside of my house if she's going to need a service dog. The times we all spend together are arranged in advance. I chose to do things away from my house so that I wouldn't have to have the dog in my house. If I had the type of arrangement that meant coming over to my house, I would make myself put up with a hairy situation, but I don't have to in this current arrangement. Sarah was not having it and started to call me ableist and unfair to her and her dog, that I've changed ever since she had her service dog, and I was baffled about everything she was saying. We ended up not hosting anything and it ended up being so awkward that everybody started to leave the group call. I honestly can't tell if I should be ashamed of myself. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for not buying my stepdaughter any food? So I, 45F, have 3 bio kids and a stepdaughter. My eldest son is 18, my middle son is 16, and my youngest is 14. My stepdaughter is 15. Since it's summer, all 3 of my kids have jobs, so they won't be cooped up in the house and for extra money for fun. My stepdaughter waited too late to apply anywhere, so all the places close already had spots filled already. Because she doesn't have a job, my wife just gives her an allowance of $50 every 2 weeks. My kids are pretty close, so on Thursdays they all eat lunch together if they don't have plans. They're never able to decide on the same thing, so they usually always just order in what they want around the same time and eat together. When they asked her if she wanted to join them, she said no because she was saving up for a pair of shoes she wanted. A few minutes later she came to ask me to buy her some food. I said no because she had money, she just doesn't want to spend it. She called her mom and she ended up buying for her, but when she came home she gave me a earful about favoritism and how I would have bought for any of the other kids. I wouldn't have, because why would I buy takeout for you if there's food in the house? But it's their money, so that do what they want with it. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for telling a large girl we don't fit in the passenger seat? For context, I'm Filipino and male 21 from the motherland. Here we have jeepneys we use for our daily commute. At this specific event, I'm seated in front, to the right of the driver. The front fits 3 people including the driver, while the back fits 16, 8 each side. 15 minutes into the trip, a large girl, approximate in her 30s, gestured to the driver to stop, indicating that she would board the jeepney. Now I'm no big dude, I'm 70 kg at most and 5 feet 10 inches. When she sat next to me, literally, my right ass cheek is barely sitting on the hard ass seat while my left ass cheek is dangling on nothing. To add insult to injury, my balls is resting on the seatbelt buckle. She then had the audacity to tell me to move further so she can sit in a commanding way. That, paired with the non-stop second-hand smoke coming from the driver's cigarette and the 9-hour internship I just did, made me reply to her with, "Wala na akong mapuan, hindi tayo kasya dito." Which translates to, "I have nowhere else to move/sit, we don't fit here." She then began crying and calling me fatphobic. As for my tone, try to imagine if you were tired, in pain, uncomfortable, hot, and keeps on coughing, then an entitled woman commands me to move. I'm definitely mad. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for not buying my stepdaughter any food? So I, 45F, have 3 bio kids and a stepdaughter. My eldest son is 18, my middle son is 16, and my youngest is 14. My stepdaughter is 15. Since it's summer, all 3 of my kids have jobs, so they won't be cooped up in the house and for extra money for fun. My stepdaughter waited too late to apply anywhere, so all the places close already had spots filled already. Because she doesn't have a job, my wife just gives her an allowance of $50 every 2 weeks. My kids are pretty close, so on Thursdays they all eat lunch together if they don't have plans. They're never able to decide on the same thing, so they usually always just order in what they want around the same time and eat together. When they asked her if she wanted to join them, she said no because she was saving up for a pair of shoes she wanted. A few minutes later she came to ask me to buy her some food. I said no because she had money, she just doesn't want to spend it. She called her mom and she ended up buying for her, but when she came home she gave me an earful about favoritism and how I would have bought for any of the other kids. I wouldn't have, because why would I buy takeout for you if there's food in the house? But it's their money, so that do what they want with it. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for telling my dad I don't owe him a favor and to stop asking like I'd ever help him? I, 17M, don't have a good relationship with my dad anymore. We were close before. But then he moved in with his wife and her kids. My dad focused only on them once we all moved in together. He was always with them, never with me. He focused too much on them. I tried talking to him but he was never ready to listen. Until last year. We sat down and talked. He'd been talking about why he was paying more attention to them and why it was important to him and how he wanted us to be close to me and the kids, and then he talked about how he knew from the moment he met them that they were meant to be his kids and he was meant to be their dad. But he always told me that becoming a dad to me had come with a lot and he wasn't always sure of me and stuff like that. How it took time. He said it wasn't ever natural or instinctual with me at the start, but he was making it clear it was with them. I told him that fucking hurt and made me realize I wanted nothing to do with those kids. He twisted himself in knots over it and we set up a day for us to have some 1:1 time. Just us. An entire day. Like he did with them. Then his stepson ended up in the hospital, so it couldn't happen. Dad apologized 100 times and promised it would happen soon. But then his wife's relative died and she was going out of state to the funeral, so of course he couldn't leave the kids and take me for a day while she was gone. And then he took a day off work while I had a day off school, and we were just about to go when his stepdaughter's school called for an urgent meeting. Dad's wife was going, but Dad told me he had to be there too. I told him to forget it. I was done. No more chances. He was clearly going to put them first and I was going to accept it and spend the next 2 years distant with all of them and preparing myself to move out and be independent. Dad tried to convince me to change my mind. But I did not. He tried to spring it on me unplanned and I had plans. I told him that, and I told him he was useless to me. He waited until my plans were over and picked me up because it was raining. I was going to walk. He insisted he wanted just me and him for a few. But of course his stepdaughter needed to be picked up and I laughed and told him even a car ride was too much and it's why I was done. Now there's this thing his stepdaughter wants to go to. They couldn't get tickets. My best friend's parents are taking their 3 daughters and have a spare ticket. My dad asked me to ask them if his stepdaughter could go. I said no. He told me to do it as a favor to him. I told him no. He begged and told me it would make his stepdaughter happy. I told him I don't want to make her happy. I told him I don't owe him a favor and he should stop asking like I'd ever want to do something like that for him after everything. I told him a few more months I'll be out of his hair, so just forget it. Dad got frustrated and told me I was making things difficult. Am I the fool? Am I the fool for explaining something to my GF in make-up terms? I 20F and my GF 19F were having dinner with her family last week. For context, she has 5 siblings and her grandparents were there, so there were 11 of us in total. My GF and I are also both neurodivergent. I have ADHD and she has autism, so sometimes when we're trying to explain things to each other we'll have to say it multiple times because something got lost in translation. We were sitting at the table at her house and there were several conversations going on around the table. One of her brothers, 15M, and I play the same video game, Valorant, and we're talking about our experiences. My GF was listening to us and asked me to explain a situation I was telling her brother about. I tried to explain it but I could tell it wasn't clicking. The only video game she plays is Stardew Valley, which I have never played, so I wasn't able to think of a comparison that would make sense to that. My GF loves to do her makeup and is super good at it. I watch her do it all the time, so I figured I could find a comparison with makeup. I told her the equivalent would be like having to do your eyeliner and get it really straight and clean and instead deciding to take some lipstick and just kinda doodle on your face. Her mom overheard our conversation and asked what we were talking about, so I told her we were talking about a video game and that my GF wouldn't get it, so I was explaining it in makeup terms. Her mom and one of her sisters got really mad and started yelling at both me and my GF's brother, saying that we were sexist and disrespectful and treating my GF like she was too stupid to understand what we were talking about. I realize looking back that saying we were explaining things in makeup terms may not have been the best way to phrase it, but I'm honestly not sure how I could phrase it any other way. My GF has assured me that she's not mad and that it was actually a perfect way to explain it and that she understood what I meant, but her mom and a few of her siblings are still really mad with me. Usually we have dinner with them on Sundays because they have a family dinner, but I've been uninvited until I apologized to her mom, which feels weird and dumb to me. It had nothing to do with her and I have no idea what nerve I struck with her. My GF refuses to go to the dinners without me because her family stresses her out, which is part of why we live together so early in the relationship. We've dated for almost a year. I don't want my GF to miss out on family time because of me, even if she didn't want to go in the first place, but I truly don't think I should have to apologize to her mother for explaining something to my GF. Am I the fool for telling an adoptive parents that they make me, also an adoptive parent, uncomfortable and that I owe them nothing? I'm a single gay man who adopted 2 boys who are now 7 and 10. Initially, most people automatically assume I'm straight and divorced but eventually find out that I'm neither. I downplay my kids' adoption because I don't want my kids to feel different from their peers since no one in their circle of peers is adopted. I find it to be a personal circumstance and no one's business. It's almost like asking my sons are circumcised. I believe adoption is a beautiful thing. However, the reality is that most adopted kids come from unfortunate situations and those situations can stigmatize adopted kids. People who don't have adopted kids don't understand that because they view the world through their lenses and how the world should be and not how it really is. My kids are very happy and have a ton of friends. Last month, a gay couple moved on the block and they have 3 adopted boys who are within the same age range as my kids. The more that I got to know Mike and Dave, the more I disliked them. However, my kids like their kids, so I let it be. Recently my kids stopped playing with their kids because they grew uncomfortable with being asked about their own adoption by Mike and Dave and other people who didn't ask before. My kids don't want to compare and contrast their adoption experiences for adults' entertainment and curiosity and then be judged. As a result, my kids stopped playing with Mike and Dave's kids. This led to simmering anger towards me and eventually it came out when my 10 years old declined to go to their son's birthday party. Actually, no one showed up. They told me that they were so disappointed that I, as a gay man and dad, didn't show support to their family by coming to their kids' party. I told them up front that just because we have a couple of things in common, that we are not bonded and I owe them nothing. They asked what they did to me and I said nothing. I'm just not comfortable with how you use your kids as clout. The way you put them on social media, like showing off a Porsche and reminding everyone that you're a gay adoptive family. Yes, my kids are adopted too, but they don't want to be around people who want to constantly remind them of it and remind them of trauma. That invites people who know nothing about us to start lecturing, shaming or giving unsolicited advice. By all means, overshare your kids' personal information and draw attention to them, but my family is the opposite. They are happy being Jesse and Matt who like Minecraft, hockey and cooking, not those 2 adopted kids adopted by that gay guy. Am I the fool for telling my friend she causes her own problems? I, 27F, have a close friend, Jane, 27F, who is constantly complaining to me about the same few things that are completely changeable. She'll beg for my advice, I'll give it, and then she'll do the exact same things again and continue to complain about them. It got to the point where it honestly seemed like Jane was just doing these things to have a reason to complain, so I eventually stopped giving her advice but would still let her vent. Recently, Jane switched jobs after years of complaining about her old one and how she felt underpaid and underappreciated, which I do agree that she was. So I helped her get a new job at my old place of employment with a significantly better salary. My old boss had left, but I was still in touch with one of my old coworkers, Sarah, who told me to let Jane know that the new boss will sometimes call employees after hours, but they are in no way legally obligated to answer and wouldn't be penalized for not taking a call. Sarah said that neither she nor any of the other coworkers have ever answered a single call and to tell Jane to do the same so he doesn't keep bothering her. I explained this to Jane before she got the job and asked if she was sure she wanted to take it, knowing that the boss might try to call her after clocking out but that she in no way was responsible for picking up. She said she understood and still wanted the job, so I set up an interview for her and she ended up getting it. A month in, Jane started complaining to me that the boss keeps calling her requesting things during off-work hours. I told her that both Sarah and I had warned her not to pick up so that she wouldn't keep being bothered by him and asked why she picked up anyway. She scoffed and said, "Because I'm a good employee, so why wouldn't I pick up?" Then continued to complain about how annoying it was to work at a place where people condoned that and how she should have just stayed at her old job. This is where I may have been the asshole. I got very upset at that comment because I worked hard to secure an interview for her, so I said, "Actually, the only person condoning that is you. You knew before taking this job that the boss might try that and you were warned to just ignore it but chose not to, and now you're complaining about something you don't actually have to do. You always act helpless and like all these situations just unfairly happen to you, but you're actually causing most of your misery yourself and I can't help you anymore." I ended up going home while Jane texted me saying she couldn't believe my lack of empathy and abandonment when I knew she had had a rough life. I told her she knew that I also had a very hard life, but I am now an adult who takes responsibility for my problems and that she should do the same. One of our other friends told me that Jane was really hurt by what I said and that I was really harsh and should have gone easier on her. So, am I the fool? Am I the fool for backing out of a trip with my friend because I didn't want to be bothered with her kids? For context, a few weeks ago I planned a girls' trip to the beach with one of my best friends to relax since we both have been stressed out with work, school, and life in general. We agreed on where we wanted to go. Andy went ahead and booked our hotel. Over the course of those few weeks, we discussed the trip and talked about what we were planning to do while we were there or whatever. The night before our trip, she calls me to go over some traveling details, and during the conversation she randomly says, "Oh, I don't think I told you, but my kids are coming. I forgot to tell you." She has 3 small children, one is on the spectrum so she requires more attention and care, which is totally understandable. I don't have any kids yet, but of course I try to be empathetic to my friends and family who do have children and have to bring them along when plans change. The issue is that my friend did not tell me until that night before our trip, as many times that we have talked, that she was bringing her kids. I love her kids, but the plan was to have a carefree weekend to ourselves and to do adults things in which we couldn't do if she has to be responsible and keep a close eye on her kids the whole time, and more than likely I would be inclined to help because I don't want to see her stressed. After we talked, I took a while to think if I really wanted to still go, and I decided I didn't want to. The trip would essentially be a kids' trip because everything would revolve around them, and that's not what was planned. I called her back and told her that maybe we should reschedule, but I presented it as if I wanted her to be stress-free and actually have fun without worrying about her kids, so I didn't sound too selfish. She seemed like she felt a way about it. But I felt a way she didn't even tell me they were coming before then, and when she finally did, I felt like I couldn't say no because it was last minute. And to be honest, I wanted to have fun with my friend, but I didn't sign up to help babysit. Am I wrong for doing that? Am I the fool for telling my mom I don't want her to submit job applications for me anymore? This literally just happened a few minutes ago. I, 18F, have been job hunting ever since I graduated high school in May of this year. I set up an Indeed account, and my mom suggested that she also sign into the same account so that she could look through it and notify me about any job she found while she's at work. Her job is pretty laid back, so she has a lot of free time. I agreed to this because I thought it would be helpful, and for a while it was very efficient. But then she started to actually apply to jobs for me without asking my permission first. But I would never hear back from the job she applied for, so it was never really a big problem, until now. This morning I woke up and saw that I'd gotten a couple texts from a hospital talking about a job opportunity to work in the hospital cafeteria. At first I thought, wow, one of mom's applications actually reached back to me. Great. But then I read the next text and it stated how the interview would be set up for next Monday at 1:30. Normally that wouldn't be a problem, but a few days ago I confirmed an interview for Miracle Ear Medical Center that would take place on Monday at 2:30. With these times it would be impossible for me to be able to attend both interviews on the same day, so I would have to cancel one and subsequently lose a nice job opportunity in the process. I called my mom and told her what happened this morning and that I would like for her to cancel the application she made, and thankfully she did. At that point I realized that I didn't trust my mom anymore to help me find jobs, as this was what was going to happen. So I flat out told her that I would like for her to stop helping. When I told her that, she asked me why in a frustrated tone. I told her how I didn't like the fact that she didn't ask me permission before applying to jobs, how she would apply to jobs that she knew I wouldn't have any interest in, how she was so forgetful that she couldn't remember the dates for interviews I already had, and the fact that this mix-up cost me a possibly good job opportunity. I also told her how I didn't trust her anymore after this incident and that I was worried it might happen again if she continued helping. Although she still sounded frustrated, she agreed to it and apologized for the mix-up this morning. Looking back, I'm starting to realize how I could have come off as cold or mean, but I genuinely think that this was the best decision to make. So am I the fool or not?